I've got Dr. Selene Kumin Vega here with me today. I know her from working with Anna Dea Judith on the chakra therapy training. I was very, very blessed to do some incredible work with her in Santa Cruz, California. She does an incredible program called Guiding the Journey. And it was beautiful, deep, deep work. And she does many things. She's an incredible talented woman that's been working in the field for a very long time. She's a licensed psychotherapist, and she's also working on the faculty of the mind body medicine program, graduate program at Saybrook University. So she is a woman of many talents. She's also got an amazing book out there as well. And I'll let her tell you a little bit more. Selene, it's so great to have you here with me today.
It's good to be here with you, Schamet.
Yeah. She's also, I asked her to be part of this summit because when I think of you, Selene, I think of the moon, I think of the goddess, I think of the connection that we have to the earth. And so, you're such an earth mother spirit to me. And so that's how we'll begin the conversation is what does the goddess and the redemption of the feminine spirit mean to you?
Well, I have to begin by saying that when we use the word goddess, that means many things to many people. I have to go back to actually my own awkward and uncomfortable relationship with the word God from my childhood, where at a certain point where I was disengaging from some of the understandings that I had been given of God. Sort of the Sunday school version evoked this, older man with a long beard, and I couldn't relate to the word for a long time because it brought up this one image that didn't speak to me. And I eventually came to a place where I could, when I heard the word God, I could understand that each person I heard use that word had their own relationship with it, their own understanding of what divinity means. And when I came to working with the word goddess, and what does that mean? I have the same kind of relationship, which is that each person who uses that word has a very different understanding of it. And for some people, it might be a visitation of a vision that looks a certain way, that speaks a certain way, that relates to one as an other, something different than oneself. My own understanding of both the word God and goddess is much more metaphorical. I don't have a sense of an entity that is a separate thing from who we are as part of this living, breathing planet and universe, that there's something so much larger than the individual self. And I think that is really what we're evoking when we use those words, both of them. And when we particularly use the word goddess, I think what we're attempting to bring in there is an aspect of that largerness, that something that goes beyond myself, that includes a lot of aspects of nature, of being, that weren't always included in that understanding of what God was. It could be that when we understand that life force energy, it doesn't necessarily have two polarities to it at all. That's just one understanding of how do we understand what is beyond us? How do we understand the divine? How do we understand some universal force or energy that we're all participating in, part of? So we could spend this entire time talking about just that, but I just wanted to clarify that I'm not that I don't always divide things up so clearly between masculine and feminine, God and goddess. But I am very committed to us awakening to something that is beyond our own individual selves and that holds all of that.
Great, wonderful. And yeah, I love that. And what does the awakening of consciousness mean to you?
Well, I think we don't even realize, most of us, how much of what we do in any given moment or day is pretty much unconscious. It's an autonomic activity. It's something that we either instinctively do because we're an organism that has instincts, or something that we've been programmed to do, something that we've learned and is now something that is under the layer of consciousness, that we think of as us. So I think I'm making all of my decisions. I think I'm making all of my choices. But the truth is, my unconscious mind is making most of those choices, and most of the behaviors that I bring to my world, my interactions. When I think of awakening, I think of becoming conscious. I think of being able to make choices from a conscious place rather than having them roll out from some very deep unconscious piece of my history, reaction to something that happened a long time ago, or even something that I've trained into myself as what I thought was a positive thing that I could learn to do. I think of consciousness, of awakening, as being able to move in and out of those realms, so that I can, at any point when I decide I'm not so happy with the unconscious reactions and behaviors that I'm bringing into the world, that I can actually bring them into consciousness and say, what's going on here? And what do I want to choose to bring into my world and my interactions with people and beings and the world at large?
Great, wonderful. So you and I had a bit of dialogue going around the awakening of consciousness. And what I loved is you said to me that sometimes the awakening of consciousness is not always pleasant, and that it can awaken, uncomfortable situations as well. And so, we've got this topic that has arisen about cultural appropriation, and you have such a well of wisdom and information to share. So I was hoping you could share a little bit of your feelings about that particular subject.
Yeah. So I will start that by bringing back to mind for you, actually, something we talked about in Guiding the Journey, and it's the concept of being in right relationship. And it's actually the way I teach it there, and a way that I often bring it up, is in terms that were developed by Kylia Taylor, and that I've taught with her quite a bit, and we might refer to it as inner ethics. And it's the idea that that we are always striving to be in right relationship, to be, especially if we're in a position to be serving as caregivers, as practitioners, as priestesses. We want to be doing everything that we do with the well-being of whoever we're working with in mind. Not just our own motivations for doing something, but with the care for whoever it is that we're working with. And to be in right relationship means being able to look at all the places where we have not been in right relationship because something came out from our own unconscious, from our own not very consciously organized self in some moment, and maybe did something that was harmful, or at least not as helpful as we would have liked to have been. The only way we can move forward and become more conscious and be able to right those those wrongs, or make amends, or do it right or better the next time. The only way we can do that is if we can recognize what it is that we did that didn't work so well, that was maybe not a great thing, that maybe came from a motivation that wasn't really in the best interest of the other person, but had to do with our own needs or our own fears. And in order to look at those uncomfortable places in ourselves to say, oh my gosh, I did this. I'm so embarrassed. I'm so horrified. All the shame that can come up, all the sense of guilt. In order to be able to do that, we have to start with a huge dose of self-compassion. Now, by self-compassion, what I mean here is that we look to our own process as a human being and give some forgiveness for not being perfect, for not doing it right, for learning, for going through that process, and for being willing to acknowledge that and learn. And to do that, we have to be able to forgive ourselves. That doesn't mean letting ourselves off the hook. It doesn't mean saying, oh, well, too bad. It's like, oh, poor thing, I did it wrong. Oh, well. It's more like, oh, gosh, what was that part of me that needed something, or that was so scared that I did that thing that was hurtful to someone else? It's not to let myself off the hook, but to have great compassion for the young and undeveloped person that I am, who is constantly flailing about and making mistakes and not doing things with the larger perspective in mind, so that I can grow into that larger perspective, so that I can say, what could I have done differently? How might I do that next time so that I don't make that mistake, so that I don't hurt someone in the way that I hurt someone that time? So I really want to offer here a moment of us being able to open our hearts to ourselves and to those who we may have harmed, and just know that we're all learning, we're all growing, we're all hopefully willing to look at the uncomfortable parts of what we may have done so that we can learn to do better.
Yeah.
So cultural appropriation, let me move to that now. I would say that 10 years ago, I had not heard that term, did not know what that meant, and was busy thinking that I could have anything that I could read about, anything that I could come in contact with from another culture, another time, and that it was all open for grabs. And what I have since learned is that that's just not so. And that what I was doing, here's me looking at my own behaviors here, what I was doing was making an assumption based on the privilege that I have as a white person in this world, to think that I can have everything, and that huge damage has been done by people coming in and overriding whatever civilization, whatever culture was in place someplace. Invaders come in and say, we love this land, we're going to take it over, it's ours now. And maybe we can kill off the people who lived here so they're not in our way, or maybe we can just subjugate them. Maybe we can convert them to our religion, which is the one true, right, and only way. Many ways that this has happened, and deeply harmful ways. Really, this is genocide, is what we're talking about in a lot of situations. It's not always genocide. Sometimes it's just the erasure of a culture. Sometimes it's us telling people that it's not okay for them to have their own languages, their own practices, their own religions, taking that away from them. But then here we are years later saying, oh, that's such an interesting that's such an interesting practice. That's such a beautiful thing that they used to wear. I think I'll use that. I think I'll take that. That would be really helpful. Or I hear this a lot. our Western culture doesn't have the richness or the beauty of some of these other cultures that we have overridden, that we have subjugated. And I think I'll just, I'll bring it back. I will honor this culture by bringing this forward into the world, while some of the people whose culture it was are still alive and aren't even allowed still to do those practices that we so easily take on and use. That's I'm giving you kind of one example of how this works, but there are many ways that it works, and it's deep and complex, and I don't have all the answers to it at all. What it really comes down to is that the people of color, the people of those cultures, the people who have been subjugated, who haven't had access to their own practices, their own materials for those practices, those are the people who have a say on whether it's okay for me or someone who looks like me to come in and have access to those practices. And those are the people we have to ask. I can't make that determination, but for anything that we're choosing to use or work with from another culture, we need to investigate whether that's okay with that culture for us to do that. We have to find out how do they feel about us working with a goddess, for example, who comes from their culture, not mine. Is it okay for them if I have a relationship with that goddess? And how much can I really know about that goddess coming from a place of my own relationship with it, from things I've read, from some inner understanding that I may think I have? How much does that relate to what that means to someone who grew up in that culture, who grew up with that goddess as part of their world, part of their understanding of who they are, and a relationship that goes back, through the generations of their culture? I think sometimes we just need to question who it is we think we're relating to, and is it really the same as it is for someone who developed and grew and is part and parcel of that relationship with that deity, with that divinity. So yes, very complicated. I think what I'm really asking for here is the consciousness and the respect for us to do our research and find out, where did this come from, and is it something that's open for me to be part of or not, and to respect those decisions if it's not.
Yeah, I love that. I love the transformation of appropriation to respect. That's really what it is about, is having some respect and some understanding. And I love, the conversation that we began when you told me about the sage. And I remember feeling a little bit triggered around, not being able to burn sage, because I've been doing that for, God, over 20 years, And then, it just took me a little bit to understand the situation where, and actually I'll let you explain it, because you did it so eloquently about the issue with the sage.
Yeah. So I'll talk about sage. And again, I'm not Native American, so this is not mine to make a decision about or to try to tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do. But here's what I have heard from many Native Americans at this point. And I can really see how deep this issue is. For one thing, when we burn sage, when we burn specifically white sage, that is part of the Native American tradition, and there is no the Native American tradition. There's many different traditions from many different tribes and groups, and I don't know all of them, but what I do know is that for some of them, at least, they've been having trouble getting access to the white sage that is so deeply a part of their tradition, because all of us Westerners who didn't grow up with that tradition, who decided it was a cool thing to do, have been buying up all the white sage. Now they don't have access to it. That is wrong. That's just wrong for us to get to have that access, and they don't. What I've heard from some is that from some I hear, don't do it at all. From some I hear, if you are obtaining it from a Native American, so it's theirs, they've grown it, they know it, they are in a place to be able to share it in that way. That's very different than people who are going in and essentially stealing the sage and using their own privilege to get access to a resource that many Native Americans don't have that easy access to anymore. So that's part of it. But just something as simple as whether we use the term smudge. I'm smudging. I have heard from many people from those traditions that it's not okay for us to use that terminology. That's their terminology. It's that if we want to burn things, it's not like burning things is something that only happened to Native Americans. Many cultures have burned things and used the scent as part of it. So it might be worth someone looking back into their own heritage to see what was burned. What are the scents that are from their own lineage, from their own heritage, or that are part of a tradition that they are learning about from that tradition. So you can certainly, smoke cleansing is part of many traditions, and that's something that we can look to see what is it that I have access to here. Burning juniper, for example, I think is a little more open. There are a lot of herbs that are open to this, and not just herbs but resins. Certainly frankincense and myrrh are, they go back a long way to burn those kinds of incenses. Many cultures have that, and we can do a little more research to see what are the ones that are closed only for the culture that they came from, or only for people who've been initiated, and what are the ones that are open for really anyone who is looking to include this in their own spiritual practice. And again, it just has to do with us doing a little bit of research and having some respect. Yeah. And I want to say in the respect piece, sometimes we'll talk about the difference between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. And again, I think to bring respect to that, we need to have that determination made not by ourselves. I might say, I'm just appreciating this. But if the people whose practice it was don't feel like that's so much appreciation, and they feel like it's really not okay for someone who hasn't been initiated to be doing this practice, I need to respect that and find another way to do what it was I was trying to do. I'll speak a little bit to my own background here. One of the things that I did as I was getting my own education, which has often been for me an opportunity to go back and learn about something that I was intuitively doing. But I felt like I needed to know more. This is me searching out for the research. When I had left college during my first attempts, realizing that I didn't know what I was doing there and didn't really know what I wanted to learn even. And when I came back, I created an independent major at the University of California, Santa Cruz, to be able to take the courses that I wanted to take. Or I should say, I took the courses I felt I needed, and then we came up with a title for what it was I was doing there. And what I ended up with was a bachelor's degree in ritual and the arts and cross-cultural perspective. And that was me learning about all these practices, because I felt the dearth of ritual in my life and in the life of so many people who I was working with teaching movement. And I wanted that. But I also realized that in studying other cultures' rituals and practices, which is a lot of what I was doing there, I wasn't looking to pick up some ritual from another part of the world and take it as my own and try to do that ritual, because I realized I come from a different culture. I have a whole different background. I live in a different land with different plants and different ways of being in day to day, and that the rituals that I needed were going to be a little bit different than the ones in another place. So I was learning from all these cultures, how do they do ritual? What works for them? So that I could look at my own culture and say, what do we need? And how do I create ritual that can serve the needs of me and the people who I know and the people who are coming to me for help in becoming more conscious? Because now we're back to awakening. How do we awaken? And the rituals that I need to be doing aren't stolen from another culture. They have to be ones that have grown out of our own needs and what can best serve us in the path that we need to be on, which is actually very individual. It's not even like there's one thing that's going to work for everyone in this culture, because it's not just one culture. There's so many subcultures. There's so many different ways of being, even for me in the United States and certain in Western culture, which is a huge topic. And we all need to find our way within it, and different things are going to work for different people.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
I love that. I love that. I just want to touch back a little bit on the sage topic, because I remember when we had that conversation, I thought, well, I have hardly ever bought sage. I've always grown my own, because it grows really well. And then you can grow it with lavender, and you can wrap your own bundles. And I've always done that just because it's really easy. And then I just like doing it myself. But then, after we had that dialogue last week, I came down into my spiritual room, and I lit up some of my incense, and look, it's California white sage. And I really got it when I looked at this. I saw it in a whole different way. It was like, oh my God, I have California white sage in, the form of this incense that I burn. But who made this, and where did it come from, and whose pockets is it lining? Like, is the money going back to the Native Americans? Because I kind of I doubt that it is. And then the penny dropped. Like, I really got it in a really deep and powerful way. And I actually haven't been able to burn it since. I'm like, oh my goodness. You brought so much awareness to me, Selene, in just that one conversation. And so I just really wanted to share that, because then you asked the question about my earrings. It's like, did a Native American make these, or were they made in China? And the answer is, I don't really know. And so that is something that we can all be aware of, because I didn't know that the Native Americans weren't able to access sage. That's very sad to me. And so I would, everyone that's listening, grow your own. If you really want to do smudging, grow your own. Don't buy the packets that are, like, who made these? And so if we can become more and more conscious about, what we're investing in. Yeah. Anyways, I just wanted to say that before we.
Yeah. that is really a big piece of this, and it's something that you can see in so many ways. Like, here's another example: some of the weavings or rugs or specific designs that come from specific cultures. And this isn't just Native American. There are a lot of different cultures that do certain kinds of weavings. And if we buy a beautiful, rug that we think is part of that culture, who's making money on it? Are we buying it from an artisan from that culture? Or are we buying the Chinese knockoff? And it's not just Chinese knockoffs, it's lots of knockoffs from different places that someone has decided to make money on someone else's design. And this is really, now we talk about this as intellectual property. And it's not okay to steal intellectual property from someone else. It's not okay to take someone else's song and just make money on that song when someone else developed this. It's something that there's both the money piece of it, which I think is deeply important, that we shouldn't be making money on something that belongs to someone else. It's stealing. But there's also a sense that I have that it's really important to give credit to those who've developed something, and that's not just a cultural appropriation issue. It really is an intellectual property issue, and it is just respect, back to respect again. But I like to, for example, as I was talking about inner ethics, and when I teach it, I always credit Kylie Taylor, who developed that. And whenever I'm using a wonderful quote, I go searching for where did that actually come from? And I think back to the very, very beautiful quote that was running around for a really long time, having been attributed to the wrong person. And it was actually Marianne Williamson's quote. And at a certain point, I found that out, and I was so embarrassed to have been attributing it to the wrong person, and made a point every time I saw it attributed to that wrong person to say, no, that's actually Marianne Williamson who said that. It's in her book. It's her words. And we need to credit the person who said that. It's just respect.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And that is bringing consciousness to the whole situation, and that is the awakening of consciousness, is respecting our roots of where things came from, and respecting how much has been taken from the indigenous tribes, so much, and understanding they're angry, and they have every right to be angry, and to really honor that anger, and that sadness, and that loss of everything that's been taken. And when you told me that story, I don't know if you want to share that story about the sweatpants.
Oh, I can share the story about the sweatpants.
Such a good story.
This is, yeah, I had bought a sweatshirt at Costco. And I loved it. I loved the fabric of it. I loved the color of it. It was really nice. And I thought, let me go investigate the company that made it, and see if maybe they have some sweatpants to go with this lovely sweatshirt that I now have. And I went to their website, and there on the front of the website was their advertising of their next line of clothes, whatever, with the models wearing headdresses, Native American headdresses. And by that time, I already knew that was really not okay. That those headdresses there's something that it's not even just that you have to be Native American to wear them. You earn them. The people who wear those headdresses are people who have come to a place of deep wisdom and respect, and have gone through so much to earn those headdresses. And to see it as a costume, as something to decorate a model who was selling their clothing, was so offensive to me, but also just kind of horrifying that they really were so clueless about this issue. And so I wrote to them, and I said, I just want to bring your attention to this. This is really not okay for you to do this. And please investigate further, and change your ways. And they wrote back to me. And what they wrote back was, "Oh, we're so sorry that you're offended, and to assuage your feeling bad, we would like to offer you, a pair of sweatpants, for free." And I thought, oh my God, they have completely missed the point here. They think it's about a customer being angry at them, and they want to make that go away. And if they just give me something, then I'll shut up and not continue to make noise about this practice that they're doing that is so wrong. And I wrote back and said, much as I would love to have your free sweatpants, you have missed the point. And the point is not about me being angry or me being offended. I have nothing to do with this, truthfully. It's about you looking deeply into what you're doing here, and how you're using something in such a horrifyingly inappropriate way. And please do some research and look at what you're doing, and make some more conscious choices. And I never heard from them again. They never did send me any sweatpants. And I think My guess is they probably did change their ways. I didn't actually continue following them after that, so I really don't know. But I have a feeling they probably learned. Again, I'm not sure they learned for the right reasons. I think what they did was thought, oh, well, we don't want to offend our customers, so we'll stop doing it, rather than looking into their hearts and saying, wow, she's right, this isn't okay. And now that we know more about what it was that we were doing, we won't do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really powerful story. I mean, when I found out that when my grandmother died and I found out that I'm part Native American, I don't know what tribe and I don't know how much, but I was so excited because it helped me understand a part of who I am. And I was so excited about it because I just have always loved Native American culture. I've always felt connected to it. It explained why I keep seeing a Native American chief that sometimes tells me off when I'm doing the wrong thing, as a spiritual guide. And I do shamanic drumming and stuff like that. So it like connected the dots of why I am the way I am. And I got really excited. And my husband bought me one of those Native American headdresses when we were in Bali. And I was wearing it and we took some pictures and I loved it. And then you told me that story and I felt horrified that I even bought it, but I didn't know the significance because I don't know my roots. Like all of that was taken from me because in my grandmother's generation and beyond, generations, it was shameful. But for me, it's not shameful at all. It's like something I want to jump up and down and celebrate and say, I'm part of Native American culture that I love so much and have so much respect for. But in my excitement of not knowing that you have to earn this, that this is sacred, that this is part of a whole cultural that I've been disconnected from. It was fascinating, Selene. I'm so grateful for this conversation and I'm so grateful for this being part of the summit because I think a lot of people don't know and they don't understand and they don't, they don't have that awareness. So it's up to us, all of us, to keep having these conversations so that so we can awaken consciousness. So yeah, it's really powerful.
It's up to us to have the conversations so we start to be conscious that this is even an issue. And then it's also up to us to investigate whatever it is that we're wanting to be part of or do, and check back with the people whose thing it is, and say, so what's okay? How can I best respect you? Not my own idea of what that respect will look like, but for you whose culture I've been wanting to do this practice or use this article or this material from, what is the best way for me to respect you? And that is the research we need to do. We can't decide for ourselves what that respect is going to look like, which is why I can't give any answers on here's how you do cultural appreciation right. I can't, because I can only speak to the cultures I come from. So my own background is Jewish. I can speak a little bit to what is appropriate for someone who's not Jewish to use of the practices that I grew up with. And it is one of the things that you're bringing up here is that sense of disconnection that a lot of people feel because it was shameful or even dangerous to admit to. There are certainly, again, coming from my own heritage here, there are plenty of people who managed to escape from the Holocaust and hid their Jewishness because it could mean their life, and it did mean the lives of many of the people who they were related to. And so we struggle to acknowledge that, and that means that all of the lineage that comes next are disconnected from their traditions, disconnected from their sense of identity as part of that lineage. And then what does that mean for someone who discovers it and says, well, but I want in now. I know nothing about the culture that I'm actually from, but I want in. And
Yeah.
I'm
And
certainly watching that struggle and how people are trying to navigate that.
that's a really big one. And I think it's about building bridges, and building the bridge is beginning the conversations, right? And being willing to have the uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. Because until we can say we can be there for our own dismay, distress, feelings of inadequacy because we did things that we feel embarrassed and upset by now, until we know how to tolerate that and be okay with not being okay, then we can't move on, we can't learn, we can't find a better way to be in relationship with all of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. And I think, my sense of the white privilege as well, especially in America, is this feeling and right to everything, to have anything, right? Without the acknowledgement of what our ancestors did. And of course, I'm not saying it's my fault that my ancestors did what they did.
Right.
However, I think there is an acknowledgement that needs to be made, that needs to have some understanding, like if it was, and I don't know, because I don't even know what my roots are exactly. A lot of that was lost. I come from the daughter of 2 black sheep that went into exile, so a lot of my roots I just actually don't know. But I think it's important to find out so that we can acknowledge the past, so we can then build those bridges so we can move forward. Yeah.
Yeah. And also to recognize that even if we had nothing to do with what happened back then, and even if we would never have done that, if we had the choice, if we were there, we are benefiting from it. That just by being white, we get benefits that we don't even acknowledge, that we don't even recognize most of the time. And I know that for a lot of people, that concept of white privilege is hard to understand, especially if we feel like, hey, I grew up poor, I didn't have any of those things that somebody who is a rich white person gets to have. But I do get to walk down a street in a white neighborhood and not have somebody shoot me because I look like I don't belong. There's a lot of things that my white privilege gets me that I don't even see, because they just make it a little easier for me to do what I do. And it's something that we as women sometimes recognize a little bit more in terms of what we don't get to have as women, the job that isn't given to us, or the salary for the same job that's higher for the man next to us doing it, because they're a man and I'm not. We might see it there, that person isn't doing anything different than I am. We're both doing the same job. They're getting more money for it. And they are not even aware that they're getting more money for it. It never occurred to them to ask whether our salaries are the same. That's white male privilege. And they don't even know they have it. And that's, I think, part of this, the consciousness and the awakening is, can I begin to recognize the places where there's an ease for me that isn't there for someone who's a person of color? And this is just, it's a huge issue, and it's not just the United States. This is all over the world. There are just issues that are being talked about now in terms of caste, in terms of colorism, for example, because even within any given culture where they are all people of color, there's often there's a differentiation between people who are lighter colored than people who are darker colored, or people who can pass, and that there are, again, privileges that come to us without our even recognizing that we have them. And so part of that awakening is, can I begin to recognize that I have that? And can I begin to be a support for those who don't? Can I turn around and say, oh, I got to walk right through this barrier that's there for someone else? Can I go back, reach out my hand, and walk them through this barrier with me, because I have that privilege to be able to do that? Or am I going to just say, oh, but I'm here now, so I'm not going to worry about it? I want to be able to reach back. I want the awakening to be about all of us having the right to all of what it takes to live free in this world, to have what we need to eat, to have the medical care that we need, to have a community that we can be part of, to have a commitment all around that we will try to continue to grow and be the best that we can be, and make room for each other, and work towards some kind of a more harmonious way of being together with each other, and not live in competition with each other, but work together. That's the world that I want to be part of.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah. I mean, it's even, I've had the experience of when I've got my hair in my braids and no makeup on, and I'm kind of hippied out, with my hippie clothes on, and I go into a shop, and I get the women kind of looking at me and scowling, and I get treated pretty poorly in comparison to going into the same shop on a different day, and I've got my makeup on, and I got my hair down, and I'm wearing nice clothes, and I look like I have money. How differently I'm treated. And that's just a small piece of what a lot of people go through on a daily basis.
And it's a piece that you have control over. You can make the choice to dress up in a way that will get you a better experience. And for some people, they don't have that choice.
Yeah.
So that's just to be able to recognize that that's even happening is a huge beginning. And then to say, well, what can I do about it then? What's my part? What can I do to change it? And this is, I think, going back again to what did our ancestors do? Well, I didn't do that. But what can I do now to begin to change the situation that's left over from what those ancestors did, whether they were mine or somebody else's? It's like, given where we are in the world now, what's my part on healing that? What can I do? And that's what I'm, continually doing, is what can I do? And, some things are bigger than I can do as one person, but the place where my voice can make a difference, I want to try and make that difference.
Yeah. Yeah, you're making a big difference, Selene, just by having this conversation right now, and that conversation that we had last week. I know when you brought that up about cultural appropriation, because I didn't even, I didn't know about it. And it was really triggering for me. And, for anyone that's listening to this conversation right now, if you feel any triggers at all, that's good. That means you're growing. That means you're awakening. And that's what we want. We want to feel those triggers. We want to feel things moving, because that's when change can happen and things start to break open. And so thank you, Selene, for your voice. It's a very powerful voice you have.
And then I think that from that place of realizing, oh my gosh, I'm triggered here. Okay, that's a huge awakening right there, to even recognize it and not just be in the triggered state. But then we have to really look at the fact that this is a physiological process that goes on when we're triggered. I mean, the body goes into fight or flight or freeze. And so then it's our task, that's when we need to take our part in it as being enough healing of ourselves, enough self-care in that moment to calm our systems down, and to not be in that triggered state where we might be reactive and lash out because it's so uncomfortable. But can we then look inside and say, okay, this is for me to heal in myself. This isn't somebody else's fault. This is me needing to look at what's so uncomfortable here, and how can I heal that part of me that needs healing, and that maybe never learned well enough how to be able to tolerate discomfort, which many of us, most of us perhaps, didn't really get enough of when we were growing. We didn't learn how to calm our nervous systems so that we can deal with whatever comes to us, whether it's really a survival issue, whether the bear is right there behind us and we have to run, or whether it's our bodies perceiving some idea as being so threatening that our bodies go into that same kind of crisis mode. We need to be able to calm ourselves down so that we can consciously make a choice about what to do next. So that trigger, as you said, it is a good thing, but it's only a good thing when we come back to ourselves with the healing of that trigger so that we can make a rational, careful, considered choice about what do I do next then.
Yeah, exactly. And, just to share with everyone that's watching and listening is, for me, the trigger was, not to go too much into my story, but when I found that I was part Native American, it was like reclaiming a part of who I am and also getting in touch with my own roots. And so when this came up, it was almost like everything that had been taken was being taken again. And, I really truly believe inside of my soul that everything is one, that we're all one, and that we're like these parts of spirit and that we're all connected, and so whether you're black, white, green, red, blue, that we're this rainbow. And for me, it's all about unification, and it's all about building those bridges of all the different cultures, and that it's all about love. And so, that's my main thing, is about bringing everyone together. So when you brought this to my attention, because I call all the goddesses in my life that I love, I call them the goddess. Oh, you're a goddess, because to me, it's all goddess, it's all God. It's all the different interpretations and of God and goddess. So when you brought that to my attention, it goes away from what I believe in. It goes into that those feelings of separation, which then I get triggered in my own anxiety of the exact opposite of everything that I stand for. So it was really, it's very interesting. Yeah.
So you've just opened up something that I want to. I hadn't even thought to talk about it here, but it's just coming up now. I also am of the belief that in the larger sense, all that is so. And I'm also aware of how easy it is for us to move into something that we might call spiritual bypassing on our way to trying to jump up into that oneness, as if we could just get there by wishing for it and kind of pretend that all the things that are in the way of it aren't really there. So it's I think most obvious in the times, for example, that I want to be able to be totally in a place of love, and yet I'm angry about something. It's like, well, what do I do with that? Do I say, oh, I can't be angry because it's all about love, and that's just not a true feeling. It's not good. I need to push that out of the way so I can be in all love. Except this, where does that anger go? It goes into the unconscious. So my conscious mind won't allow me to even acknowledge that I have this anger going on. So it starts to come out as what we might call passive aggression. It comes out in ways that I don't even recognize, because I won't allow myself to be conscious of the fact that I have this thing that doesn't fit into this spiritual value that I hold. We can't just jump up to the final state. We have to go through all of the processes involved of healing the things that are in the way of us being there. And we have got a lot, we human beings, we have got a lot of healing to do before we get to that kind of unity state that you're describing there. I want to get there with all my heart, but I know I'm not there yet. And I know that if I try to just be there and pretend that the rest of it isn't happening, I'm in a spiritual bypass. And that my task in this life is to continue encountering and working with all of the things that are not that. And instead of trying to push them away or pretend they're not there to myself, I need to own them. I need to say, this is part of me too. And how can I heal this? What's the healing that's involved in this? What part of me has to find its way through this shadow part in order to hopefully someday become all about love and only all about love. And every time something comes up that's not all about love, I need to turn and face it. In the same way that I was saying, I need to reach behind me and bring those through who don't have the privilege. I have to look behind me and say, oh, here are the parts of me that aren't yet all about love. And what do they need? So that I can begin to find a little bit more of that all about love piece in my life.
I love that. I love that so much, Selene. Thank you so much. Yeah. We can't just love and light life, can we?
No, it would be nice, but we're not there yet. That's right. Yeah, we are still human beings on the path.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there any last and final thing that you would like to say to everyone that's listening?
Well, maybe just to take a moment here to come into our hearts and do a little bit of that calming of the nervous system and connecting in a way that allows for all of that to be present and for us to stay conscious and present with it. So maybe we could all just, I'm all for putting your hand on your heart if that feels right to you. And letting your eyes close or go soft focus if that feels comfortable. And just tuning into your breathing in this moment. And all that might be going on in you. Whatever feelings, reactions. And just noticing that breath that is still there. No matter what else we're doing, that breath is right there. Our bodies are breathing for us. And just by bringing our attention, our focus to that breath, joining in with this unconscious process, we're sending a message. And that message is, I want to be present for all that's in me. I want to make space to know what's happening inside me, even the parts that are uncomfortable. And we can breathe a little more deeply down into the diaphragm, expanding down to the belly. And that sends a message to the nervous system. To say, it's okay. We're safe right here. It's okay to feel these things that I'm feeling. It's okay to relax, to let the tensions release a little bit more, and to just be present for what's there inside. To learn and to grow and to see how we want to consciously move forward from here. To be with and heal the places in us that take us into unconsciousness. Oh, one more breath here. Maybe a little bit of gratitude for our own ability to be present for ourselves. Maybe a little bit of commitment to continue to be as present for ourselves and for what's needed for healing in the world, as well as ourselves. And then coming back to each other, back to the world.
Such a beautiful meditation. Ah, beautiful.
Glad to be able to share that with you, Schamet, and with whoever is listening.
Yeah. Selene is an absolute master of putting people into a very relaxed state. That week that I spent with you was so powerful, guiding the journey. So if you have any opportunity to work with Selene, definitely look her up. She's got a website that I'll connect in to the information. She's offering a meditation that will be part of the All Access Pass. So if you do decide that you would like the backstage, I'm calling it the Backstage Pass VIP area, then there'll be a mindful moments meditation from Selene. So definitely do that. And thank you so much, Selene, for offering all of your wisdom and your knowledge and that beautiful, heartfelt meditation. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Yeah. Aww.